Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here with Father Hugh Mackenzie in Westminster Cathedral, the Westminster Diocese, and I'm going to be filming a series called Ask a Priest, in which we address some of the most common objections to and questions about Catholicism. So I'd like to welcome Father.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, I'm going to dive in straight to the first question, which is, why should we believe in God?
I think we should believe in God because of the coherence of the universe in which we find ourselves. So it's not so much about, I think, really tracing back a series of causes back to someone who kicked off a series. I think rather it's a better angle to take on this is that the whole universe in which I find myself at least makes sense. This room makes sense. Its context of London and planet Earth and the solar system, as we've discovered, particularly from modern science, makes a sense. That's the type of thing that comes from intelligence. Someone, therefore, who has organized it as one thing. And we know that because I have a sort of intelligence. I have a body which reacts with the world in which I find myself in an intelligible, quite clever way, but not free, according to its physical nature. There's instinct, there's reaction and action. It's maybe a technical word, deterministic. But I also have a freedom within myself, something that is somewhat distinct, therefore, from the body understood as a purely physical thing. And I can be creative and I can create amazing cameras and sound systems that are being used right now. That gives me a category with which to say, well, as it were, initially by analogy, it seems like this coherent cosmos is organized by a mind. And then I think if we bring in Newman, actually Newman has some of what I've just said there, like the two different types of causes. And he says that the basic cause is the one that comes from will. And that's the one most intimate to me, free will. Newman says that in his Apologia, in his autobiography. Cardinal Newman, of course, being in the Catholic mind, particularly at the moment, because he's just been raised to the highest level of saints, really a doctor of the church, at least someone whose writings are important. And then Newman goes on to say, conscience is also part of this perception that I'm involved in, that this world enables me to react with it bodily, to freely choose actions across a certain range of possibilities through my spiritual side. And linked with that, it's a matter of choosing values. There's a sense of good and bad. There's a sense of building up and destroying. And there's a sense of well-being when I do good and a sense of guilt when I do bad. That there seems to be a moral lawgiver, says Newman. So I think they're the best and most immediate reasons for believing that there's a personal creator who's set up a world which invites me. The physical world is sacramental is a word we use, something which invites, which speaks of an invisible mind, and this is inviting me to be good. I think that's reasonable to take that perspective upon the world in which I find myself.
You mention, interestingly, perhaps the arts, I suppose, is a reason to view humanity as more than just material or physical. And I know that Thomas Aquinas, in discussing why one should join the church, gave three sort of categories, which were goodness, the goodness of the people, beauty, and truth. So are you suggesting that not just in terms of joining the Catholic Church in particular, but also in terms of establishing, does God exist, or why believe in God, would you say that beauty is perhaps the most significant reason?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I would say that, I think with Thomas Aquinas, he initially spoke of truth and goodness, as there was this technical word, transcendentals. aspects, if you like, of what it means to exist. And truth being the object of the intellect, our ability to understand, and goodness being the object of the will, our freedom, our ability to act based upon what we understand. So, in a sense, the argument I've just given there is from truth, that is to say, it's an organized environment I'm in, or cosmos in which I find myself, and goodness, that my conscience senses that it's good and that I'm meant to cooperate with this goodness. Beauty, I think Thomas Aquinas did allude to that possibly being a transcendental as well, and some contemporary thinkers have articulated that in interesting ways as well. Beauty seems to be perhaps something that builds upon truth and goodness as a sense of harmony with a certain delight in the human subject as well. So, yeah, I would think beauty's relevant. Some people might say we're particularly relevant in our culture where beauty perhaps moves people more than truth and goodness. That's a possible argument, but I would I would root it all in truth and goodness. In seeing an intelligence which is good behind the physical universe.
A final point on this question in particular, I think in these times we see an increasing number of people going towards the scientific method for the answers to all questions. How do you feel these people can come to belief in God? Do you think that there's a particular argument or?
Yes. I think that we need to respect the scientific method. It's been extremely successful, really, in developing our life in many good ways, and obviously the technology we're using right now comes from the knowledge that has been gained, particularly from the development of the experimental method from the 17th century on. It's also, I would just highlight, linked the cosmos in ways that we didn't understand, I think, before the experimental method came in. So that's to be taken into account as well. But what I would want to say to someone, particularly if they have a materialist bent, is that actually science, as well as a way of understanding things, has reminded us that human beings see things as fitting together. There's a certain coherence there. And there's an important thinker called Immanuel Kant in the 18th century who really realized that as a result of his studies of the modern scientific method. And that's reminding us that the world is not just objective things, it's that there's also the human subject who is aware of this, and indeed in a free, creative way. So it's to reduce everything to atoms doesn't really make sense. The sort of problem there, how do you, where do you end up in that reduction if you're a sort of radical reductionist materialist? To remember that humans actually understand all things as having a meaningful relationship with them, otherwise they couldn't understand it, and that we're free as well. So that's what I'd want to say to the scientific atheist of today is, well, can you not see there's something more to the human person than the purely deterministic, physical, interrelated, very well layered physical world that the human body senses and that science investigates very successfully? So I don't want to lose that. I just want to put it in balance with human creativity, if you like, put matter in harmony with mind. And then, as I've just done, argue that just as behind some of the matter we deal with, like these sheets here or something, there's my mind. And behind the whole of the context out of which sheets and technology have come is already ordered in a very similar way, and in a way that has moral value. And that's very good evidence for saying that there's also something non-material behind that.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that covers question one quite nicely. So.